Hey guys, welcome back to Roundtable Talk and welcome back to another edition of Music Monthly. As my channel was mostly focused on new hip hop over the last couple of months, I've really liked this series to reflect all of the music I'm listening to from each different genre, from each different artist. This is just my chance to highlight my favourite music of the month, as well as to tell you guys a little bit just about why I like them. Before I dive in, please do make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on all the social links below. You'll also find a brand new Spotify playlist in the description box below that will include all of the music that I talk about today. Let's jump straight in. First track is Lianne Havas with Can't Fight. Lianne Havas has been releasing a fair bit of new music over the lockdown period, and I do believe she's building up to the release of an album. This latest track called Can't Fight has a real sort of a live feel to it. Her vocals are, reliably always gorgeous, and they're really warm on this track, and it almost feels a bit like she's got a live band there recording with her, and I think it adds a really nice element to her music and works really well with her type of voice. Next up is an unexpected collaboration between Deadmaus and the Neptunes. It really is funky as hell, and does a fantastic job really of combining the two sounds of the Neptunes, Pharrell, with someone like Deadmaus, and Pharrell's melodies on this track are really impressive. Next up is Kygo with a track called The Truth, featuring a vocalist called Valerie Broussard. The track itself is nothing particularly new for Kygo. His sound does get a little bit repetitive, but when he does get it right, it really does just feel like summer on his tracks. And this track, The Truth, is a prime example of him getting it exactly right, and it's one of the best off this new album, I would say. Then we've got the return of Black, or as many people like to call him, Six Lack, with ATL Freestyle. Just an effortless freestyle track that he's released, floating over slowed samples and a guitar riff, and indulging in a little bit of storytelling as well. It doesn't feel like a freestyle in itself, definitely feels like a fully constructed and well put together song, but I think that just says a lot about his talent. Next we've got Headie One's recent track, Rose Gold, a great combination of the sort of dark drill sound that he came up on, but also the experimentation that he was doing on his most recent album with Fred again, experimenting in all sorts of different sounds. The melody that he's weaved in to this pretty hard drill track is really good, and the track's visceral lyrics are very effective. I did a first reaction to this on the channel a few weeks ago, so yeah, please do head to the channel to check that out. Next up is Lil Simz with a track called You Should Call Mum off her new EP, Drop 6. Like Lianne Havas, there's sort of a live feel to all of the music that's on this EP. It's incisive lyrics over dark production. Probably a little bit darker than was on her 2019 album Grey Area, and subject matter across the board really is a little bit more personal, a little bit more introspective, and the EP itself, it really is a great little body of work. You Should Call Mum was my favourite track off of first listen, but do also check out my full reaction to the EP also on my channel. Next is a new track from Drake called Losses, a very intimate track, and definitely the standout from his sort of compilation that he released earlier this month called Dark Lane Demo Tapes. It's a very personal Drake track with him talking with palpable disappointment about a friend who has changed on him recently or let him down. Again, not specifying particularly who it is, but they're very harsh words that he does provide to this person. In the vein of a track like a Too Much, or even a Look What You've Done type of Drake track, very heartfelt lyrics over a very much classic 40 beat with reverse samples and piano. As part of my Roundtable Revisit series, we are currently going through the discography of Drake, so again, if you're interested in going back through Drake's discography from the very beginning, starting from Room for Improvement and coming all the way up to the present day, head over to watch that series over on the channel. Next is Kehlani with a track of her new album, Water. Very sort of sexually explicit song, but it's also bouncy and a bassy track. Also, Kehlani delivers a really, no pun intended, fluid vocal performance, which is probably one of the best performances I've heard from her on any track. She's almost half rapping at points on the track, and just the whole album really is refreshingly forward, and Water is probably just the epitome of that. Next is Nav with Saint Laurent. If you do go and check out my first reaction to the Nav album, I really didn't enjoy it, and I'm not a huge fan of Nav in general, but I did say on that review that I think Nav works so much better when he leans more into the crooning side of his music than trying to be one of the sort of auto-tune trap rappers that he sometimes does try to be. There's a track called Saint Laurent on the album, which easily was the best track on the album there for me, so it lands on this playlist. Just leans more into Nav's strengths, I think, as an artist. We've also got a new track from Moses Sumney called Bless Me. Moses Sumney has released his most recent album, Grey, in 2 parts, I think spaced about a couple of months apart. The first half was okay, a bit so-so for me. Second half added on, I think, about maybe 8 tracks potentially, and was much stronger. Bless Me was my favourite from that second half. It really is an expansive track with a haunting guitar, and while Moses' vocal style isn't for everyone, is a little bit toned down on this track, which I think works for him and works for this track in particular. And it's really nice to listen to this track and see how it really builds to a massive crescendo at the end of it, with some really sort of beautiful instrumentation. In a similar vein, we've also got a new track from Jacob Banks called Like You'll Never See Me Again. He's got a beautiful tone to his voice. It's a really pleasant sounding acoustic guitar song. Almost feels like gospel, with some really great added vocal effects towards the back end of the track, which I really did enjoy. Next is OVO's Roy Woods with a track called I Feel It. I'd say it was probably the standout track from his latest EP. Although I think across the EP he does sound a little bit creatively lost. I enjoyed this track, but the EP overall did let me down. I was a huge fan of his album Waking at Dawn. I think it came out in 2016, and this EP and his last few projects really just haven't really reached that level. I Feel It is kind of as close as he gets to that, and I really do hope that he does sort of find his way back over the next couple of years. Next is Trippie Redd and PartyNextDoor with a track called Excitement. Amazing track. Feels like it's straight off of P3, PartyNextDoor's a mixtape from years ago, and some of his most sort of creative production work. I'm not sure who produced this, but like I said, it sounds like vintage PartyNextDoor production. Aching vocals from both of them, and a really sort of deep bass and a lot of depth to this track. Disappointingly, I'd say it's better than pretty much every track on Party's last album, Party Mobile. Next up is a new track from Lil Wayne called Big Worm, which is one of 8 tracks I think that Wayne added to the deluxe version of his latest album, Funeral. Obviously the trend has become these days is to add tracks at a later date to an album, calling it a deluxe. I guess to boost streaming numbers, all that kind of stuff. But it now means that Lil Wayne's latest has 32 tracks on it, which really is just criminal to as a body of work. It's one that you can't ever really revisit in full, and I think just completely ruins the album experience. That said, the added tracks are a bit of a mixed bag, but Big Worm was one of my favourites. It's a much more sort of low-key track than a lot of the other ones. I found as Lil Wayne's got older, he's become a little bit more try-hard in terms of his vocals and the way that he raps. But on Big Worm, I did enjoy it. Next is my favourite of the new Brockhampton tracks that have been released this month as part of their Technical Difficulties series. The free music they're releasing every Saturday, I think it is. My favourite of those tracks so far was, I think, maybe the first one, which is called n.s.t. Production is a modern update on the old school sort of boom bap production. The verses are all sort of top notch, especially Jabari's vocals at the start of the track sounds very much like James Fauntleroy, whose work I really enjoy. But overall, just really just fantastic instrumental that did really blow me away on first listen. And my reaction to each and every one of those Brockhampton tracks is on the channel, so please do head over and watch those. Next, it's the track Circles by Deante Hitchcock. Deante Hitchcock is an artist I'd never heard of until this month. We released his debut album, although I do think he has a sort of independent album before this, which I haven't listened to. But vocally, he does sound like maybe a little bit more versatile version of DaBaby. But the project itself was really impressive. As I said, I'd never heard of it before, and I went into the project with pretty much low expectations, and I'd go as far as to say that it did kind of blow me away. It's a really sort of classy body of work, well thought out, concise as well, which is really important. And he's one of those people that I think could be really successful on a mainstream level if he continues it in this way. But the boy can really rap as well. And one of those albums as well that I really wish I'd reacted to, because I think I would have had a really interesting on-camera reaction. Speaking of great projects, we've also got a new one from Kota the Friend, a really cool chilled jazz rap artist, I guess you'd call him. My favourite track from that album was the collaboration he has with Joey Badass and Dreamville rapper Baz. Joey's verse really is immense. On this sort of jazz rap, there's often a bit of a lull in the energy, and Joey just brings it in spades, honestly. Like, it just, even if you're not a fan of this kind of more chilled out rap, I definitely recommend listening to it just for Joey's verse. Baz obviously brings it too, but Joey absolutely steals the show. Really looking forward to new music from him as well at some point. We've also got a new piano-led ballad from James Vincent McMorrow called Headlights. Again, I've been a huge fan of his work for quite some time. Obviously very James Blake inspired, very minimalist, but a very decent track, and nice to hear some new music from him. Also, the 1975 finally released this album after releasing, I think, about 10 singles since mid-2019. My favourite of those tracks outside of the singles, which a few of those which I've enjoyed very much and have been included on my Music Monthly, whatever month they came out. But my favourite of the new ones would be a track called I Think There's Something You Should Know. The album itself is a bit all over the place in terms of style, but this track is a really nice combination of instruments, breakbeat kind of drums, piano, very reminiscent of a Lighthouse Family, even changes a little bit by Tupac. While the chorus is really simple, it's got this really great drive to it, which again, just made me really like that song. Next is a new track from D-Smoke featuring Sir called Let Go, a poignant track addressing the recent racial tensions in America. Then we've got Maverick Sabre with a new single which sounds very Arctic Monkeys inspired. That sounds quite similar to a lot of the work you'd hear on Arctic Monkeys AM, and all of that's a compliment. I did really enjoy it, and Maverick's vocals are always reliably great. Also got Tory Lanez with a track called Temptations, which does see him kind of doing a Chris Brown impression. Tory is a bit of a hip-hop and R&B parrot in those ways, but at the same time it's on a very clean production and is a very decent sort of baby-making R&B track. Then we've got a new collaboration from Coltrane and Kehlani. Does at times come across like a sort of discount dancehall Drake P&D song, but those dancehall drums and that bass line are just so infectious. You can't not feel like you want to move to this kind of track. It's interesting that Kehlani sounds a bit like Kehlani vocally on this track as well, who worked with P&D quite often in the past. So yeah, it sounds a little bit derivative, but still an enjoyable track. Then we've got a couple of tracks from Future's latest album called High Off Life. Riding Strikers and Pray For Me. They are my standout tracks on that, purely based on instrumental, I think, but please do check out my full reaction to the entire album on the channel. Next is UK rapper H with a track called Zombie, produced by Kenny Beats. I didn't think H was much at all really when I first heard him. His, I think maybe 2018 single, Taste, just a generic UK attempt at sounding like US music, which is something I really hate when sort of grime and UK rap does that. But H's verse on Stormzy's album really stood out to me, so I did start checking for his music, and then I saw that he's working with Kenny Beats, who I'm a huge fan of his work with Denzel Curry, as well as a few other artists. And I think Kenny Beats produced like a couple of tracks at the start of H's new EP, and the production is fantastic, but H can really rap, and obviously him rapping with this sort of very noticeable Manchester accent, it's very novel, it sounds new, it sounds different to anyone else in the mainstream, and his flow and his bars are just so on point, I think, throughout the album, so I'm interested to see where he sort of goes from here. Continuing the UK theme, we've got a track from AJ Tracey and n.s.t called Dinner Guest. AJ Tracey continues to prove himself as one of the UK's best hitmakers in terms of this genre. It seems to be the most surefire way for these guys to cross over into the mainstream is to, sample a classic dance or pop track, and they do the same on Dinner Guest, and both of them deliver some really cool verses. I really do enjoy AJ Tracey's wordplay as well in terms of listing the UK singers, or shouting out the UK singers on his second verse, so yeah, enjoyed that track. Next is Polo G with a track called Heartless off of his most recent album, The GOAT. It's a DJ Mustard beat, but not the standard sort of one you would expect from him. It's got this sort of muted guitar that I really like. Polo G for me, it comes across a little bit generic at times, but I have enjoyed the growth that he's shown sort of lyrically and with melody on The GOAT. It seems like a development for him. But as I said before, in terms of being a bit generic, he just reminds me too much of the likes of, you know, Lil Durk, Roddy Ricch, and I do dislike how similar all of these guys are sounding, but at the same time I can appreciate the evolution. Then we've got Lucky Day with a track called Shoulda, which I think is a deluxe track from his album Painted from last year. It features R&B legend Babyface. Lucky Day is probably up there with Giveon as one of the most exciting new voices in R&B that I've heard in a long time. I've heard him on features, and I think I've heard a couple of tracks from his debut. I am actually thinking about doing a reaction to that debut album. I've kind of been saving it, I haven't listened to it yet. It was from, I think, late 2019, but let me know if you guys would be interested in me reacting to that album in full. But yeah, Lucky Day's vocal tone has got this sort of Frank Ocean quality to it, a little bit more traditional than Frank, and it's got this, and this track in particular has got this warbling, really nice production in the background, and of course, you know, Babyface is a legend, comes through with fantastic vocals as well. But yeah, big fan of Lucky Day, and I'm really excited to see where he and Giveon both take R&B going forward. Also got a new track from Big Crit called Cold Game. It's one of the tracks added to the re-release of his debut mixtape, Crit Was Here. I did find it interesting that a lot of the tracks that were added to this re-release obviously replaced some of the tracks that couldn't get cleared. Unfortunately, some of my favourites that weren't cleared in terms of the samples to be put on streaming platforms. But I find it interesting that a lot of these re-release songs were a lot better, in my opinion, than much of the material on Crit's most recent album. So I guess that bodes well for his next project. And this track, Cold Game, is peak Big Crit, very lyrically dense over a really nice sample. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Then we've got a new track from Mahalia called BRB. It's from her Isolation Taped EP. I really love pretty much everything that Mahalia does. She's up there with Snow Allegra as one of my favourite female artists at the moment. She's got such a pure vocal, and I love the way that her R&B is very conversational, very relatable, and the horn sequence on this track is really impressive. She pretty much carries on where she left off on the last album, really, in terms of blending in those live instruments like saxophones and things with traditional R&B, which yeah, just really enjoyed. Then, taking a bit of a different route, we've got Chris Brown, Young Thug and Gunna with the track She Bumped Her Head. For me, it's the best track and the most immediate track from the collaboration album between Chris Brown and Young Thug, which honestly had no right to be as good as it is. Honestly, I was so impressed by this track. I've done a full reaction on my channel, so please do go and check that out. All three of them are flowing magnificently. Young Thug just absolutely kills it with the flow switches he was doing in that verse. Gunna is okay, and then Chris Brown's verse is just so charismatic. But yeah, as I said, please do check out my full reaction on the channel. And then lastly, throwing in a bit more of the UK sound, JME and Skepta have released a track called Nang. It's off JME's album that isn't on the streaming platforms, and he's just been releasing videos for it over the past few months. The two of those guys, obviously brothers, fantastic chemistry on any track really they're on together. Just it's such a reliable duo, to be perfectly honest. The viciousness in both of their rhymes, just they always sound like they're spitting like their life depends on it, and it just adds such an urgency to every single track they have together. So yeah, a very good track as well. So yeah, those are my favourite tracks, I guess, that I've listened to this month. As I said before, please do check out my Spotify playlist and follow me on Spotify. I will be releasing these playlists every month with all the new music I've been listening to over the period. Let me know in the comments below what's been your favourite track that you've heard this month. Is there anything I've missed that you think that I should be listening to? But yeah, let me know. Apart from all that, please do remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and follow me on all the social links below. I'd really appreciate it. All that said, hope everyone's doing okay, hope everyone's staying safe, and I'll see you for the next one.